So the theme that we always have a theme that some topic or some teaching that we'd like to cover off. And so today is going to be about relationship agility. For those of you who joined us last week, we had a great session, 2 days, and there was a lot of interest in what it means to have mental agility. And so this is a good follow on to that. Before I jump to that, I just want to throw this up here for those of you who are joining for the first time, to share with you that this little venture of mine, the Envi Mission, is really about bringing self-responsibility, self-leadership, focus, clarity, and composure, as well as human sustainability into our communities, into our schools, and in every one of you. So that is what I wake up in the morning aspiring to do. Now, this is, I will be actively dialoguing with you. So here's your first question, and please do participate. And as I always say to people, there isn't any right way to articulate stuff. So whatever comes to mind, whatever feels right, please go ahead and share here. So the first question is, what is relationship or relational agility? And if you could just throw in a few words or a line to say, you know, to me, it means this. That would be great. Let's get that started there first. Yeah. Did somebody say it was going to be easy? It wasn't going to be easy, was it? Actually, I'm not going to make your brain hurt too much. So anyone who wants to jump in? Evolving as you go in your relationship. Very good word, evolving, as in always changing. Thank you. Recognizing each other's differences. Very good. Yes. And the important word there being recognizing, because those also tend to be in flux. Decade after decade, we all kind of shift as we get older, and we almost have to stay ahead of what's changing now, what are our differences now versus before, and then you continue to evolve along those lines. Supporting each other's values in a way that supports your own. Yes, so that is also agility, right? Because that also requires you to shift what you need to support from decade to decade. That changes as well. What we cared about in our 20s is not what we care about maybe in our 40s. And so you also have to shift as your partner or your friends' values are also changing. What I like about that is there's this mutual support, right? In a way that supports your own. Not so easily done, by the way, if you have different values. Good one. Could it also mean less complaining? Perhaps. If you were fully supportive, they probably wouldn't be complaining. Working together. Yes, working together. And so here's everybody's question though, right? Like, for us to work together, two of us have got to want to try, right? And sometimes in relationship agility, it's very challenging for us because you may be trying to show agility, but the other person may not be. Thank you for those thoughts. Really good start here. So here's some textbook definitions. Oh, and there's a question here. What is a relationship? No feelings are final in a relationship. True. So I hesitate to come to conclusions. Yeah. So feelings are always evolving in a relationship. If this is a long-term relationship, as I just said, you kind of go through very many different phases of growth. And so feelings will always be in flux. They're never final. But in order for you to grow to your potential and the other person to grow to their potential, you do need the other person who you're with to evolve with that. So there isn't a sort of a point of conclusion. It's more like, as somebody just said, it's an evolution. It's an ongoing journey. So here's a couple of definitions that might actually resonate with you. Relationship agility is the ability to change and evolve, which we've just covered off very nicely in your answers. The ability to change and evolve how we relate to each other. So your ways of communicating, the ways of complaining, perhaps, the ways of working together. And then requiring the integration of many other aspects of yourself, the way that you communicate, the way you show compassion, the way you show your truth, the way you respect, the way you love has to evolve. And as two people learn to play that, it sounds complicated, doesn't it? We all do the hard work. And so then when there's an effective integration of that, then we're able to see the agility in a relationship. Here's one that I really like. And this is the ability to observe and understand your own inner workings first. So I love this definition because it kind of breaks down the stages, right? It is your ability to first observe and understand your own inner workings so that then you can pivot and co-create with others. So we always tend to sort of look at relationships in terms of, well, how can I better support you? But I think this journey starts with a very solid quest and understanding of yourself first. And it isn't a one and done thing either, right? So once you can do that and you understand yourself, this is about self-awareness, then you are able to pivot and co-create with others. And I believe that when your self-awareness is in a good place, then it becomes easier to adapt and co-create with others. We'll talk a little bit about that pivoting part. And so for me, and I know for many of you here, all of this has to serve a purpose, but this really is about the greater we that comes after you first look inside. Then you can co-create with others. But the end objective at the end of the day is your partner, your marriage, perhaps your family, and then your extended family and your community. And so that's the we there, even in your workplace, for example. So let's have you share here now, as I've just shared those two definitions with you. And when you think about that, what one thing do you observe of yourself that you know shows you are not agile in a relationship? And this is easier done when you kind of think about a relationship that is pretty foundational to you, or a friendship that's very important to you, where you find that you're not showing agility at times. What do you observe yourself doing when you know that you're not doing that? What are you experiencing? Maybe perhaps the behavior that you're showing, anything. What do you observe of yourself? I can tell you right now, myself, that I have a lot of work to do when I feel as if I'm not being heard. And if I'm not being heard in a particular relationship, then I have a tendency, because that's something that has been innately in my life from the very beginning, is that thinking that if you raise your voice, then you're going to be heard. And so it's a behavioral thing. And so for me, I don't find that that's being very agile, because that's not really thinking about what the other person is receiving or is responding to. It's just something you want to do. So I hope that's a good example. Oh, I see people are afraid to own up. No pressure. That's part of observing as well, self-observation. I really got nothing here. I'm trying. It is, I feel the same way with kids. Falguni, I'm surmising that has to do with raising your voice. If it is, I'm with you. uh, Importance. Um, what is one thing that you observe you're doing when you don't feel that you're being agile in a relationship? While maybe you can explain what importance means in that context. To get my way, keep saying, oh, repetition. Yes, don't we all do that, right? We feel anxious at times, in perhaps with one person in particular, that we're not going to get our way. And so what we think is that if we keep saying it over and over again, my husband always tells me, he's like, you already said that. You don't have to repeat yourself. And so we keep saying that because we think that either the person will hear the third time or they'll forget, perhaps. So that's not showing a lot of agility, because they're not responding to that behavior. Anyone else? Any other behaviors that we tend to show? How about some of us just go silent? Just kind of look away, withdraw, right? not say anything at all, and perhaps even hold our emotions inside is not showing agility either. Oh, we lose focus. Yes. We display anger. Correct. And when we go silent, we tend to harbor everything that we feel. So the withdrawal is another way in which we're not showing agility because we don't want to communicate, and therefore the person across from us is kind of left there, without the tools to move on, right? Kind of stunts the growth. All right, so these are good examples that we've just come up with. Very good. So then I ask, why is that important? Why is it important, this stuff about, evolving, working together, even observing what happens to us when we're in a relationship and we're starting to do things like silent treatment? So why is it important that we understand this? Any reasons why we think that it's super important that we be able to overcome some of these behaviors or things that we do thinking we're going to get, things where we want to get them to? Any ideas why that's important? There has to be a reason why we're sitting here having this conversation about being agile in relationships. Why is it important that we are? What's it going to do for us? What's it going to do for our interactions with others? Strengthen them. Correct. Yes. It is going to strengthen relationships if we're courageous enough to continue to build agility in our interactions, right? Because it's our way of showing that we care enough and that we're willing to try different things. Any other reasons why this is important? Let me share a few. The first reason we do this is because it helps us build self-awareness. The very notion that we actually have to become introspective in order to build agility enables the mind to say, I need to look inside. And when we look inside, as we have covered off in the past two sessions, when we talked about what is mindfulness, right? We said that there are so many different channels in the mind that we could leverage. But when we become stuck in our ways with our own version of the story, we tend to be only using one aspect of our brain. And so the practice of self-awareness enables us to use our full brain, our emotional side, our intuitive side, our logical brain. So there has to be a way that we build self-awareness. And this is a good reason to actually build agility because it helps us build our relationship with ourselves. The second is that agility forces us to look inside and then prioritize our responses. So when we look inside, we then develop an ability to observe and ward off things like judgment, bias, past patterns, and here's a big one, emotion. I was just listening to a talk last night by Sadhguru, very short one, but a very important one, in which he said something pretty controversial when he said, in your relationships, try to demote emotion. In other words, what he was saying is you can run your relationships first with your logical brain and your sensibility, warding off all these things. But when your emotion starts to control the conversation, then you've pretty much lost the battle. And some of us might argue at that, saying, well, if we care a lot, that's an emotion we want to show. Yes, you can. But when you drive with emotion, that's when you lose equanimity. And that's the third bullet there. So it's important that we do build agility because it also helps us understand how to respond with equanimity. What does that mean? All of those things over there, right? Showing composure, showing clarity, not being over emotional, taking responsibility for ourselves and for everything that's happening around us. So that equanimity is a third reason why we want to build agility. It helps us show authenticity with compassion. So you can still be yourself, right? But you can be yourself and still express your story without making other people feel that their opinion might not be in the right place. And when you're able to be agile in relationships, you then actually can experience the full wisdom of the collective. What does that mean? In any given situation, I always say, we're here to interact with other human beings. So in community, at our workplaces, our children in school, there's a collective notion there. And so if you really want to experience the wisdom of being in the collective, it's important to be able to be agile. And from that comes the ability to be more creative, right? Because you can hear other people better. You can listen to what they're saying. You can connect dots better. So that's agility, right? When you're responding in a way that does all of these things, that's why it's important that we develop agility in every interaction we have. But at the end of the day, I would still say, so what? The end game is fourfold. Visibly get out of your own head first, right? When you show agility, you're actually getting out of your version of the story and you're looking at the other 60 versions of the story that are going on, and you have an ability to do that. And through that, you develop a reputation of credibility. You show integrity in everything that you say because you think through, not from your own lens, but from the other person's lens as well. And through that, you're able to expand your radius of impact. So many of you are out there making an impact every day in multiple people's lives. When you are more agile from a relationship standpoint, you actually can be far more impactful with people and with groups of people. And what is it for you? It actually means less stress, because relationship management is stressful. It is a stressful notion. It is this notion that you can build agility and the other person may have zero agility, and they may have zero understanding of it and zero intent to change. That's stressful. But if you can actually do all of those things, as in look inside, practice the mindfulness required to be agile, you won't be too attached and married to any one position. And that's actually very liberating. So share with me here, with a loved one or in your family or in a workplace, how have you cultivated agility? Just pick one instance where you've over time realized that your pivoting a certain way has actually bettered relationships. I see here less conflict, correct, yes. So when we are agile, there is less conflict. I can't promise you that always. As I said, it depends who you're dealing with. But what you will experience is less stress on yourself because you will remain centered no matter where that person goes with it. While you're thinking about this question, I'll share that in the workplace, this one trait has really helped me as a leader. I've encouraged my teams to build agility as people by simply giving them the power to stipulate what performance means to them, how they want to show up at work as a team. And so they actually define their own values, and then they define their own communication patterns, and then they define the way that they're going to measure it themselves. And so you're giving them a lot of empowerment and rope. And as you do that, you're basically cultivating agility on the team because they themselves are now looking at each other and learning to work with each other without the interference of anyone of authority telling them how it needs to align with corporate values and it has to be a certain way and these are the behaviors. Well, sure, it's my job to do that, but giving them that rope has really helped them find their own identity in those relationships. Is this what happens at Envia with people in companies? Yes. So this is a trait that Envia is bringing to people in the part of the Aura experience, as well as in organizations when we work with teams. So that's a good question. Yes, that is true. So is someone going to share with me how you're cultivating agility in your life? Give us some ideas. Something you do habitually now, you've realized that this shows that you can pivot, you can evolve. What are some of those things you do? This is not an easy subject. Some of the past ones, like last week, some pretty easy questions. We had a lot of input, but I know these questions really can cause you to stop and think. Change my patterns, yes, because you're aware of your patterns. So that's a really great answer. You can't change something you're not aware of. So the very fact that you know that you're changing your patterns whatever that habit or behavior is, there is an awareness first that this is a pattern. I do this and then this happens. If I behave this way, I have this result. What if I behave a different way? What is the new pattern? I think when you have kids, your relationship is constantly evolving as they evolve. True. Yep, because they're on a very big growth journey and rapidly. So what they value one day might not be the next. Yeah. Very good answers here. Thank you. Use different communication methods. Correct, because every one of us responds to different types of communication. And this is a very good one because we tend to say, you know what, I'm a very direct communicator. I have a style. This is my style. I tend to do it this way. I tend to, and so we're so stuck in the way that we prefer to talk and interact that we really are not learning to pivot depending on who the audience is. So that's a really good answer there. People are pivoting, Dipti, thank you. More patience. Cultivating patience creates agility. Very good. Giving other people space. Yeah. Instead of constantly repeating ourselves, perhaps we step back and give them a chance to sort of process what you're asking for. And then if it's been an hour, you can repeat yourself again. No, I'm kidding. But yes, giving other people space. Very good. Some really good answers here. Thank you for that. So here's some of the ways in which, I love this pictorial, by the way, because I find this pictorial, when it comes to sunflowers, tells you that, the lights there around the palm tells you that you actually have that power within you, right? To feel the softness, to feel the beauty, and be able to touch it. So I always have found that a lot of my agility, be it mental agility, and last week we talked about how mental agility played a role in my climbing mountains and learning how to climb mountains and what the various stages of a mountain can do to your mindset. So we talked about that. And I found that a lot of types of agility come from a mindfulness practice. And that's one of the things we do with our experiences, is teaching people what mindfulness practice works for them and serves them in their daily life. But a mindfulness practice informs and supports your agility with others, right? When you have a practice like that, it teaches you how to first observe and continue to observe and continue to evolve and strengthen your ability to observe. And once you can see things as clearly as you can inside, then you have the opportunity to start to reorganize those observations and prioritize them and decide what needs to stay for the present moment and what you can absolutely release. What doesn't need to have voice in any one particular moment. And that's what allows you to stay present. And then once you've released some of that stuff, the past and what that person did to me and this person's habit of doing whatever and all that noise, then perhaps you have the energy, the right energy to activate a different type of behavior. So these 3 stages is what aura stands for. And so this habitual cycle that you can engage in throughout your day actually helps you be agile with everyone that you interact with, planned or not. This is a rather full slide. You don't have to read it all because I'm just going to talk to you. So the first thing was, these are multiple ways in which you can become more agile in relationships. Practice your mindful self-awareness in every moment. If you start a practice in the morning, I do mine in the morning, but if you start to build that practice, and you will start to see how that energy transfers itself throughout the day in everything you do. So practice that in every moment. Second, read the room. Know your audience. Do your homework. If you're at work and you're going into a meeting and you don't know who the audience is, do the homework. Know who you're going to be talking to. When you walk in, read the room. And this too is very powerfully done if you have a self-awareness practice. Number 3, Prepare ahead of time for possible outcomes. Not everyone is going to behave predictably on any given day, right? Especially if you're in the workplace. You just don't know what happened to that person last night, or you don't know what their predicament in general is. And these days, with the level of turnover that we have in workplaces, you also don't know who you're going to get the next day. So prepare ahead of time, but even then, when you walk in, read the room. And how do we do that? How do we read the room? We listen first. We practice silence. We ask questions. We seek to understand the full picture without just kind of barging in and starting to advocate, preach, lecture, do the things that we think should be happening in this moment. Observing silence also means you get to step away and ask for time to reflect. That's a way you show agility. Something's really coming at you and rubbing you the wrong way. The answer is not to push back at all times. Maybe question, maybe ask a couple of questions so that you know you got it right. But at the same time, step back and just say, you know what, let me go think about that. Just give me a moment. And if the person is imposing, if they're pushing on you because they think you're deprioritizing just because you asked for some time off, draw a boundary. Draw a boundary and just say, I just need some time to process this. That's agility as well. Don't emulate other people's behaviors because you think that that is the only way to get them to listen. Someone's shouting at you. Your shouting back is not the right thing to do. Perhaps you think that that's their language and you should use it back, but frankly, all you're doing is giving your power away. They could push you. They could not be yelling. They could be just using language that makes you feel uncomfortable, threatened, upset. But the idea there is not to go into that ring with them with the same behavior, because you're preserving your own energy then. And last thing I'll always say, this is one I love to do, and it's really helped evolve agility in relationships, is I consciously, call me a glutton for punishment, I intentionally put myself in new and uncomfortable situations all the time. Okay, sometimes I don't know the full story. I don't know what's going to happen in that room. I don't know the subject matter, but I go in. So it could be a new activity that too plays with your energy, the way you handle stress in a new activity, a new type of interaction, a new meeting, a new subject, anything. Just try to put yourself out there, because what it's going to teach you is there's nothing better than practice in the moment when you observe yourself in situations like that. Okay.